Her voice cut sharper than glass. "Keep your filthy hands off my car." In the rear seat of a black Mercedes, Evelyn Cross, the youngest CEO in Cross Dynamics history, was watching her billion-dollar merger collapse in real time. Her Bluetooth headset crackled, the Japanese translator had just canceled, and her investors were already threatening to pull out. In the driver's seat sat Daniel Hayes, silent, composed, a man Evelyn had never once really looked at. For 3 years, she'd spoken to him only through orders. Turn left. Wait here. Don't talk. But today, this morning, her empire was falling apart. The interpreter services were gone. The deal was minutes from death. And the man she'd just called a driver was about to reveal he spoke 9 languages, had saved 3 international treaties, and once negotiated for the President of the United States. By the time this ride ended, the woman who thought she ruled the world would learn she'd been driven by the very man who could rebuild it. Morning light spilled through the glass towers of Manhattan, catching the chrome edge of a black Mercedes gliding through rush-hour traffic. Inside, the air smelled of perfume and power. The woman in the back seat, Evelyn Cross, CEO of Cross Dynamics, was halfway through a conference call that was going wrong by the second. "Richard, I don't care what it costs," she snapped into her headset. "Get me an interpreter. Japanese, Mandarin, whatever it takes." Static filled the line. The sound of her own breathing mixed with the chaos of horns outside. Her manicured fingers drummed on the leather seat as if she could force the world to obey her tempo. In the driver's seat, Daniel Hayes kept both hands on the wheel, eyes fixed on the blur of yellow taxis ahead. He'd driven this route 1,000 times, from Evelyn's penthouse on Fifth Avenue to the steel and glass tower that bore her family name. He knew every pothole and every silence she preferred. Today, the silence broke. "What do you mean, all 3 services are booked?" Evelyn's voice rose. "It's a billion-dollar deal, Richard. $1.2 billion. Daniel adjusted the rearview mirror. Her reflection flickered there. Perfect hair, perfect panic. She was pacing in the back seat, phone pressed to her ear, the Bluetooth light blinking like a warning. For 3 years, he'd watched her from that mirror, always controlled, always composed. Now the veneer was cracking. Mascara smudged beneath her eyes. Her hand trembled as she swiped through contacts. "Try someone in Tokyo or Singapore. I don't care if it's 3 a.m., she hissed. "We cannot postpone." Daniel heard every word. He'd once sat in rooms where voices like hers negotiated between nations. Now he watched those rooms from a car window. "Keep your monkey hands off my car." The words hit the air before she realized she'd said them aloud. Daniel's hand had moved toward the radio, instinctively trying to mute the static interference. He froze mid-reach. Evelyn's tone cut like glass. "You think because you drive my Mercedes, you get to touch my things? You're the help. Stay in your lane." Outside, sirens wailed somewhere uptown. Inside, the silence that followed was heavier than traffic. Daniel's jaw tightened. His eyes never left the road. "Yes, Miss Cross." "Matter of fact," she added, voice trembling with the need to reassert control. "Put the partition up. I'm tired of seeing your face in my mirror." The button clicked. A faint hiss, and the glass barrier rose between them, sealing off the 2 halves of the car. The world of privilege in the back and the world of endurance in the front. Behind the partition, Evelyn's voice resumed its frantic rhythm. "What do you mean the Nakamura Sharma team lands in 90 minutes? We're not ready. Richard, This merger is survival. You understand that word? Survival. Daniel could see her through the camera feed on the dashboard, pacing, gesturing, unraveling. The woman who'd built an empire was being dismantled by one missed phone call. He thought of the hundreds of conversations he'd overheard over 3 years. The late-night calls, the whispers about layoffs, the numbers that didn't add up. Cross Dynamics was bleeding cash. This merger wasn't ambition, it was oxygen. Evelyn slammed her phone against the seat, cursed softly, then began to dial again. Come on, come on. Voicemail, another number, voicemail again. Her breathing quickened. The mask of the executive queen was gone. What remained was a terrified human being watching her empire slip away. That was when Daniel made a decision. He lowered the partition. "Excuse me, Miss Cross." Her head snapped up, fury blazing in her eyes. I told you to. What languages do you need?" The question hung between them, quiet but solid. Evelyn blinked. "What did you just say?" "For your merger meeting," Daniel said evenly. "What languages do you need interpreted?" She stared at him as if he'd spoken in riddles. "That's not your concern." "Japanese and Mandarin," Daniel continued, tone calm, almost clinical. "Possibly Hindi or Korean, depending on secondary investors." The way he said it stopped her cold. There was no accent, no hesitation, just the precise cadence of someone used to international rooms. Evelyn's voice softened involuntarily. "You speak Japanese?" "Fluently," Daniel replied, "along with Mandarin, Hindi, Korean, Arabic, Portuguese, French, German, and Spanish." Her phone slipped from her hand. The car seemed to exhale. "You're telling me," she whispered, "you speak 9 languages?" Daniel met her gaze in the mirror. "Would you like me to demonstrate?" Before she could answer, her phone lit up again. Nakamura Sharma Holdings. Her throat tightened. "I can't. Not without an interpreter." "May I?" Daniel asked, extending a hand toward the console. Pride and desperation wrestled in her eyes. The phone kept ringing. Finally, she handed it to him. "Moshi Moshi, Takahashi-san," Daniel said in flawless Japanese, his voice transforming. Gone was the subdued tone of the chauffeur. In its place came the confident authority of a seasoned diplomat. The voice on the other end answered rapidly. Daniel listened, nodding, occasionally responding with measured phrases. "Hi, hi. Cross Dynamics no Keiyaku ni tsuite." Evelyn sat frozen, watching the back of his head, listening to the flow of words she couldn't understand. He shifted seamlessly into Mandarin as another executive joined the call. The cabin filled with the rhythm of foreign syllables, soft, formal, musical. After a few minutes, Daniel covered the mouthpiece. "There's been a cultural misunderstanding," he told her quietly. "Your legal team's language sounded aggressive. They think you see them as subordinates, not partners." Evelyn's pulse pounded in her ears. What kind of misunderstanding? "The kind that kills deals," Daniel said. Then back to Japanese. Calm apologies, respectful tones, subtle phrases that soothed tension like water over stone. Within minutes, the energy in his voice changed. Lighter now, conversational. Evelyn saw him smile, just faintly. He hung up and handed her the phone. "They'll proceed with the meeting," he said. "Landing in 70 minutes. They're looking forward to seeing you." Evelyn stared at the device, then at him. "Who are you?" Daniel turned the Mercedes into the underground parking of Cross Tower. The fluorescent lights washed everything pale. He parked smoothly, shut off the engine. "Someone who needed work 3 years ago," he said softly. And someone who still believes in second chances. The car's silence felt enormous. Evelyn could hear her own heartbeat. She spoke his name for the first time in 3 years. Daniel. The word felt strange, human. I need to know everything. He met her eyes through the rearview mirror. PhD in International Relations, Georgetown. Master's in Applied Linguistics, Harvard. 22 years as Senior Diplomatic Translator for the U.S. State Department. Each line hit her like a physical blow. I specialized in high-stakes multinational negotiations, G7 summits, trade agreements, crisis mediation. Budget cuts ended my position 3 years ago. I needed work immediately. Evelyn's memory flashed. Overheard phone calls, half-heard words about hospital bills. Your mother's treatments, she murmured. Cancer? Daniel nodded. And my daughter's tuition. She's at Johns Hopkins, pediatric oncology. Wants to save kids like her grandmother. The fluorescent light hummed. Evelyn stared at her trembling hands. So you became a driver? I became whatever I needed to be to survive, he said simply. They sat in silence. The partition between them now felt absurd, a symbol of everything she'd refused to see. Miss Cross, Daniel said, gently formal again, your meeting is in 40 minutes. Neither moved. I've listened to your business calls for 36 months, he continued quietly. Every deal, every crisis, every night you worried about losing this company. Her face flushed with shame. Why didn't you ever say something? Offer to help? He gave a small, almost kind laugh. Would you have listened? The answer hung there, unspoken, undeniable. Her phone buzzed again, a text from Laura Chen, her assistant. Nakamura, team early, lobby now. They're here, Evelyn whispered. Daniel was already out of the car, circling to open her door. Same motion as always, same quiet courtesy, but everything had changed. As she stepped out, she looked at him properly for the first time. The pressed uniform, the calm posture, the eyes that saw more than she ever guessed. Will you help me save my company? Daniel straightened. Let's go save it, Ms. Cross. The elevator doors closed behind them. Inside, the mirrored walls reflected two people who had shared the same space for years, yet never truly met. Evelyn stared at her reflection beside his. 22 years of diplomatic service, she murmured. Harvard, Georgetown. I paid a former State Department translator to drive me to Starbucks. Daniel's lips curved slightly. Life has a sense of humor, she exhaled shakily. Tell me about before. He kept his eyes on the digital numbers climbing. Tokyo Embassy, 1998 to 2003. Negotiated trade deals that prevented a currency war. Beijing, after that, helped draft the intellectual property frameworks your company still uses. Evelyn's head snapped up. We've used those clauses for years. Then Geneva, UN climate accords, back to D.C. for cabinet-level briefings. Translated for 3 presidents, 2 Democrats, 1 Republican. The elevator stopped at the 15th floor. Neither moved to exit. What happened? She asked softly. Budget Reconciliation Act of 2022, Foreign Service downsizing, 20% staff cut, last hired, first fired. But your experience meant nothing against spreadsheet math, Daniel finished. She felt dizzy. So you just started driving? Had 2 weeks to find income, he said. Mom's oncology bills, Natalie's tuition deposit. Pride doesn't pay for chemotherapy. The elevator doors opened to the executive lobby, then closed again when they didn't step out. I applied everywhere, he continued. Consulting firms said overqualified. Corporations said too specialized. Universities said too expensive. Cross Dynamics needed a driver. I needed a paycheck. For 3 years, she whispered. For 3 years. Outside the elevator, people hurried past, unaware that the fate of their company had already shifted. Inside, Evelyn Cross, the woman known for never flinching, felt her certainty collapse. "Daniel," she said, voice unsteady, "why didn't you ever fight back? Demand recognition?" He smiled sadly. "Ms. Cross, I've negotiated with dictators and diplomats, but never with anyone more dangerous than someone who's already decided what you're worth." The words hit her harder than any boardroom insult. "Every morning," Daniel went on, "I told myself this was temporary. Every insult, every dismissal, every briefcase tossed onto the passenger seat, I chose to believe that someday someone would need what I actually know." Evelyn swallowed hard. "And today? Today you need it." The elevator hummed. Numbers glowed higher. "Daniel, I owe you—" "You owe me nothing," he interrupted gently, "except the chance to do my job, save your company, save those jobs. That's what matters." And the elevator doors slid open to the executive floor. Evelyn stepped out first. Daniel followed, not as a chauffeur this time, but as something new, an equal walking beside her. The camera in the hallway might have captured that moment. The CEO who finally saw her driver, and the driver who finally stepped into the light. Somewhere behind them, the elevator doors closed, leaving their old selves inside. The elevator doors slid shut behind them, swallowing the echo of their footsteps. Inside the executive corridor, light poured through glass walls and bounced off polished steel. Every reflection seemed to whisper wealth, precision, control. But beneath that sheen, the air vibrated with quiet panic. Phones rang in clipped bursts, assistants hurried with coffee cups, and someone whispered the word bankruptcy as if naming a ghost. Evelyn Cross walked like a storm bottled inside a designer suit. Her heels struck the marble floor with the rhythm of a clock she could no longer control. Daniel Hayes followed half a step behind, hands clasped, gaze steady, no longer invisible, yet not quite seen. At the far end of the corridor, Laura Chen, her assistant, appeared clutching a tablet. "Ms. Cross," she said breathlessly, "the Nakamura advance team just landed. They're in conference room A asking about cultural protocols. Nobody knows how to answer." Evelyn's pulse jumped. For years, she'd spoken the language of quarterly reports. Suddenly, she realized culture could kill faster than numbers. "It's handled," she said, surprising herself with the calm in her voice. "Laura, meet Daniel Hayes, our—" she hesitated, only a heartbeat, "our interpreter consultant." Laura blinked. "Consultant? He's your driver," Evelyn finished for her, tone hardening. "And a Georgetown Ph.D. who speaks 9 languages. Any other concerns?" Laura's eyes widened. "No, ma'am." "Good. Take him downstairs to the executive shop. Get him a proper suit. Navy, conservative tie, 10 minutes." Laura nodded and hurried off. Daniel turned to Evelyn. "You realize this will raise eyebrows." "Let them look," she said. "They've been blind long enough." The dressing room smelled of starch and cedar. Daniel stood before a mirror while Laura fussed over measurements. He hadn't worn a tailored suit in 3 years. The fabric felt like a memory. When the tailor stepped back, Even Laura stopped speaking. "Better?" Daniel asked. "Like a different man," she whispered. When he re-entered the executive floor, heads turned. Conversation dipped, then stuttered back like a record skipping on its groove. Evelyn was waiting outside the conference room, phone in hand. For a moment, she simply stared at him. The uniformed driver was gone. Standing before her was the man who had once spoken for presidents. "Let's see what you can do," she said. Conference room gleamed like a surgical theater. Glass walls, chrome fixtures, a mahogany table large enough to host a minor peace treaty. 3 Japanese executives from Takahashi Industries stood near the window, accompanied by a translator who looked uncertain. When Evelyn entered with Daniel, the men turned and bowed. Daniel bowed in return, precise to the degree. He spoke first in formal Japanese, voice deep and respectful. The translator's mouth opened, then closed. His services were suddenly unnecessary. One of the executives, Kenji Takahashi himself, smiled broadly, gesturing toward the seats. "What did you tell them?" Evelyn whispered as they sat. "That Cross Dynamics is honored by their presence and grateful for their patience while we prepared culturally appropriate materials," Daniel replied quietly. For the next 40 minutes, language flowed around Evelyn like water. Daniel navigated between Japanese, English, and the occasional Mandarin phrase when intellectual property topics arose. He didn't just translate words, he shaped tone, softened edges, reframed ideas. When Takahashi frowned at a clause, Daniel murmured something that made the man nod thoughtfully instead. The temperature in the room shifted from wary to warm. During a break, Evelyn leaned toward him. "How did you know to say that about family honor?" "I spent 5 years in Tokyo," he said, sipping water. "You learn quickly that business there is never just business, it's legacy." The second half of the meeting turned into a choreography of trust. When one executive mentioned gift exchanges, Daniel's pen moved swiftly over a notepad, small sketches of objects annotated in Japanese kanji. After the delegation left, Evelyn stared at him across the empty table. "You just reversed a 3-month disaster in 2 hours." Daniel smiled faintly. "Preparation prevents humiliation." Before she could respond, a voice called from the door. "Miss Cross?" It was Charles Benton, the CFO, tall, gray-haired, radiating boardroom certainty. Behind him came Megan Avery from marketing and Ethan Price from finance. "Board wants an emergency meeting," Benton said. "Who's he?" Evelyn stood. "Our new interpreter consultant." Price frowned. "Where's the professional service we hired?" "Unavailable." "And this gentleman?" Daniel extended a hand. "Daniel Hayes." Avery raised an eyebrow. "Weren't you her driver?" The pause stretched too long. Evelyn's voice cut through it. "He was. Now he's the reason the merger still exists." They exchanged looks, the kind that say we'll humor her for now. The boardroom felt colder than the conference hall. 12 directors sat around a long table, the city skyline burning gold behind them. Evelyn stood at the head, Daniel slightly to her right. "I want you all to meet Daniel Hayes," she began. "He'll handle international communications for tomorrow's session." Benton leaned back. "Evelyn, this is a billion-dollar merger. We can't improvise." "We're not improvising," she replied. "We're surviving." Avery crossed her legs. "With respect, the Japanese expect professionalism. We can't show up with someone who looks—" She caught herself. Like what, Miss Avery? Evelyn's tone sharpened. Like he doesn't belong in the room, Benton finished bluntly. Evelyn inhaled, ready to strike, but Daniel raised a hand gently. Mr. Benton, what specific concerns do you have regarding Japanese protocols? Benton blinked. Well, gift etiquette, bowing angles, seating hierarchy. Ah, Daniel nodded. Ogai-san summer protocols. Executives of founding families seated based on company establishment year, not revenue. Cross Dynamics was founded in 1982, Takahashi Industries 1952. They'll expect the position of honor, and will provide it. The room fell silent. And Miss Sharma from Mumbai follows British Indian conventions, Daniel continued calmly. Direct communication, minimal ceremony, absolute punctuality. She'll interpret delays as weakness. Avery whispered, How do you know this? I negotiated the 2019 Tokyo Trade Framework and mediated the 2020 Sing-Euro Bank dispute. No one breathed. Evelyn let the silence stretch, then said quietly, Any other questions about Mr. Hayes's qualifications? None. Good, she said. Daniel, what do we need to prepare? He outlined a strategy. Gift lists, seating charts, linguistic revisions, etiquette rehearsals. While he spoke, Evelyn watched the shift happen. The skeptical frown smoothing into concentration, pens moving across notepads. When the meeting adjourned, Benton lingered. Where's he been for 3 years? He asked under his breath. Learning everything about this company, Evelyn said, while we learn nothing about him. By 9 that night, the office lights thinned to a few golden pools. Most employees had gone home, only the hum of the city and the click of keyboards remained. Evelyn found Daniel in a glass-walled workspace surrounded by papers. Color-coded folders covered the table, blue for Japan, red for India, green for China. A map of gift ideas lay open beside a printout of patent summaries. You should rest, she said. Almost done, he replied without looking up. She stepped closer, noticing the neatness of his handwriting. Japanese characters drawn with the discipline of years. What are these? Profiles, he said. Mr. Takahashi's father survived Hiroshima and rebuilt the family business from rubble. He values perseverance more than profit. Miss Sharma lost her first company to a bad translation in court. She'll respect linguistic precision. And Victor Liang, he prefers solutions framed as mutual innovation, not correction. Evelyn stared at him. How do you even find this information? 6 hours of research, he said simply. Your regular interpreters wouldn't bother. His phone buzzed. The screen glowed Mumbai office emergency call. He frowned. Problem? Possible IP theft, he murmured. Regional Director Kumar Patel only speaks Hindi. Evelyn's heart sank. We can't afford this tonight. Daniel was already answering. Namaste, Kumarji. Man Daniel Bol Raha Hoon. For 20 minutes he spoke rapidly, switching between Hindi and English, asking sharp legal questions. Evelyn watched the transformation. The quiet driver, now a command center of calm authority. When he hung up, she asked, What was that about? Competitor tried to steal our AI algorithms, he said. Kumar caught them. I walked him through the legal containment process. It's handled. She blinked. You just saved us again? Daniel shrugged. Miss Cross, your company loses millions every year through miscommunication. I've been documenting issues I overheard. He opened a thick folder. Pages of missed opportunities, translation errors, failed deals. The Seoul software contract failed because your interpreter used informal Korean with the CEO's father. Deep insult. Berlin partnership collapsed because your legal team sent contracts in American idiom. Germans read that as arrogance. Evelyn covered her mouth. Why didn't you tell anyone? His smile was gentle. Would you have listened? She had no answer. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown international number. Don't answer, she started, but Daniel was already reaching for it. Sterling. Cross dynamics, he said smoothly. Hayes speaking. A pause, then German flowed from his lips, quick, confident, rhythmic. Evelyn stood frozen, listening as his voice shifted between firmness and charm. 10 minutes later, he hung up, laughing softly. Your Berlin partners, he explained. They want to reopen negotiations. Heard about tomorrow's merger. Realized they made a mistake walking away. Evelyn stared. That deal was worth $40 million. It still is, he said. Video call next week. She sank into a chair. How many opportunities have we lost? The past doesn't matter, he said, handing her a leather-bound binder. Tomorrow does. Everything you need to know. Each executive's history, decision-making patterns, emotional triggers. Read it tonight. She took it, fingers trembling. The binder felt heavier than gold. Daniel, she said softly, who are you really? He looked up, eyes steady. Someone who believes in second chances, for companies and for people. That night, long after Daniel left, Evelyn sat alone in her home office, city lights shimmering through floor-to-ceiling glass. She typed his name into a search bar. Daniel Hayes, State Department. The results poured in. Commendations, news articles, diplomatic awards. A photograph caught her breath. Daniel, standing behind 3 U.S. presidents, headset in ear, translating between world leaders. The caption read, Chief Negotiator Prevents 2018 Trade War. Her throat tightened. For 3 years, she'd ordered this man to fetch coffee. She closed her laptop slowly, staring at her reflection in the dark screen. Tomorrow, she realized, wasn't just about saving cross dynamics. It was about redemption. At dawn, Evelyn returned to the office. The city was still waking, delivery trucks groaning, pigeons fluttering against skyscraper glass. Inside, she summoned the board again. When they filed in, she stood tall, binder in hand. Before today's merger, I need to address yesterday's concerns about Mr. Hayes. Projector light washed the room pale as she pulled up documents on the screen. Charles, you questioned his credentials. A State Department certificate appeared. Presidential Commendation. Prevention of U.S.-China Trade Crisis, 2018. Ethan, you doubted his experience. Another file. Lead Negotiator, Asia-Pacific Economic Framework, 2019. Megan, you wondered whether our partners would take him seriously. A scanned letter filled the wall, handwritten in Japanese, signed by Prime Minister Sato. The room went silent. For 3 years, Evelyn said, voice trembling only slightly, we've employed one of America's most accomplished diplomats and used him to drive our CEO to meetings. No one spoke. Effective immediately, Daniel Hayes is promoted to Senior Vice President of International Relations. He'll head a new Cultural Intelligence Division. Budget $2 million. Benton opened his mouth, but she cut him off. Any questions about Mr. Hayes's qualifications? Silence. Good, because he's about to save this company. 20 minutes later, Daniel stepped into the boardroom in his Navy suit. For the first time, every executive stood as he entered. Evelyn handed him a slim black card holder, his new business cards printed overnight. He accepted them with a nod. "Thank you for this opportunity." "The opportunity is ours," she replied. Avery approached first. "Mr. Hayes, I owe you an apology." "No apology necessary," he said, though his eyes softened. Benton extended a hand. "You proved me wrong, and I'm grateful." Daniel shook it firmly. "We all make assumptions. What matters is what we do after we realize them." Evelyn watched the exchange, something stirring in her chest that felt like pride, not in herself, but in the moment. "Ready, Mr. Vice President?" she asked quietly. Daniel straightened his tie, a faint smile touching his mouth. "Ready, Ms. Cross." As they walked toward the elevator together, equals now, the hum of the city swelled beneath them. Outside, dawn light reflected off glass, sharp, blinding, beautiful. Inside, a different light was dawning entirely. The woman who once saw only status was beginning to see people. The man who once drove in silence was about to drive the world forward again. And tomorrow, when the doors opened to the largest meeting of their lives, the world would finally hear the voice it had ignored too long. The morning of the merger glowed cold and sharp over New York City. A thin layer of fog hung between the skyscrapers, diffusing the light into a silver haze that mirrored the tension running through Cross Dynamics headquarters. Inside, Evelyn Cross stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of her office, her reflection split across the glass. Behind her, the city pulsed with indifference. Taxis honked, coffee vendors shouted, and somewhere, a street musician's saxophone bled through the hum of morning traffic. She felt strangely detached from it all, like a queen in a tower watching her kingdom without the power to move it. Her company had survived the night, but the day ahead would determine whether it lived. Daniel Hayes entered quietly, a dark folder tucked under one arm. He no longer looked like a driver. The Navy suit was immaculate, the tie perfectly centered, his posture balanced and unhurried. He carried an energy that drew the eye, a calm gravity that made people lower their voices when he passed. "Mornin', Ms. Cross," he said. "I've finalized the briefing documents for the delegation. The gifts are being prepared downstairs." She turned. "You didn't sleep. Neither did you." He placed the folder on her desk and opened it. "Each item has personal significance. For Mr. Takahashi, a restored fountain pen from the same post-war manufacturer his father used. For Ms. Sharma, a silk scarf hand-embroidered with a Sanskrit quote about truth, her favorite proverb. And for Mr. Liang, a framed photograph of the first American-Chinese trade delegation, signed by both presidents. Symbolism matters." Evelyn traced a finger over the photograph. "You did all this overnight?" Daniel gave a small nod. "Preparation prevents humiliation." She smiled faintly. The phrase had become their private code. "Your mind never stops working, does it?" "It had to stop once," he said, glancing out the window. "That was enough." Evelyn caught the flicker in his voice, years compressed into a single sentence, but she didn't press. "The board will join us in 10 minutes, she said. "They want to rehearse." "Then we rehearse." They walked together through the corridor. Assistants whispered, some in awe, some in confusion. The story of the driver turned vice president had already begun to circulate like corporate folklore. In the elevator, the silence was different now. Not tension, but focus. Evelyn studied Daniel's reflection beside hers. When you walked into this company 3 years ago, did you ever imagine you'd be leading it through $1 billion negotiation? I imagined keeping the lights on, he said. Not this. She watched his profile and the steady line of his jaw. You never once acted like you resented me. Would it have helped? Probably not, she admitted. The elevator chimed. But it would have made sense. He smiled slightly. Sense is overrated. The boardroom was already buzzing. Charts littered the table, translators' equipment sat idle in a corner, unneeded now. Charles Benton rose as they entered. "Mornin', Evelyn. Mr. Hayes?" His tone carried respect this time. "Everything ready?" Daniel reviewed the seating diagram pinned to the digital display. "Mr. Takahashi should sit opposite you, Ms. Cross, to symbolize equal standing. Ms. Sharma on your right, she interprets spatial proximity as respect. Mr. Liang near the screen. He values information over symbolism." Benton watched, impressed. "You've done this before." "Once or twice." "Understatement of the decade," Evelyn murmured. Daniel briefed the executives on greeting rituals, gift exchanges, acceptable body language. He demonstrated the proper bow angle for Japanese elders, the handshake duration for Indian dignitaries, the pacing of formal Mandarin introductions. Even the skeptical marketing director, Megan Avery, was taking notes. When he finished, the room broke into quiet applause. "I think," Evelyn said, "we might actually be ready." Daniel closed the folder. "Then let's make sure readiness looks like confidence." And the next hours blurred into a montage of preparation. Staff arranging flowers chosen for their cultural meaning. White chrysanthemums for respect, not lilies which in Japan signified death. Security checking badges, catering verifying tea blends approved by the delegation's preferences. Daniel moved among them like a conductor guiding an orchestra. Evelyn watched from her office doorway, realizing she'd never seen her company so alive, so coordinated. It struck her that leadership wasn't about command, it was about coherence. At noon, as the teams finalized logistics, Daniel returned with a quiet update. "They've landed," he said. "Mr. Takahashi's team cleared customs early. They'll be here in 40 minutes. Evelyn exhaled slowly. "Then this is it." "This is it." He studied her face. "You're prepared." "I'm terrified," she confessed. "Good. Only fools aren't." He checked his watch. "There's something I need to tell you before we go in. My daughter called this morning. She's been worried. Tuition, loans, everything. I told her not to worry anymore." Evelyn smiled gently. "You'll tell her tonight that her father saved hundreds of jobs." "If we succeed," he said. "When we succeed," she corrected. For a brief second, they simply looked at each other. Two people who had traveled different roads to the same crossroads. Then Laura appeared at the door. "Delegations here." The lobby filled with motion. Photographers, interpreters waiting awkwardly, security staff guiding guests. Daniel's calm presence became the axis around which the chaos turned. He greeted each delegate personally, bowing to Mr. Takahashi with perfect precision, clasping Ms. Sharma's hands warmly, and addressing Mr. Liang in fluent Mandarin that made the man's eyebrows lift in surprise. Evelyn followed his lead, mirroring gestures, repeating greetings softly. The formalities dissolved tension before it could take root. Inside the conference room, the temperature of conversation remained balanced, polite, promising. Daniel's translations flowed like water. He converted Evelyn's clipped business tone into respectful diplomacy and rendered the delegation's guarded phrases into actionable clarity. When Takahashi expressed concern about intellectual property security, Daniel's voice carried quiet empathy. Mr. Takahashi wishes reassurance that Cross Dynamics views this as a family partnership, not merely a transaction. Evelyn responded exactly as rehearsed. Our vision is generational collaboration. Your father rebuilt his company from honor. I intend to build ours the same way. Takahashi's stern face softened. Ms. Sharma nodded approvingly. Even Mr. Liang smiled. During a break, Evelyn whispered, "They're listening." Daniel adjusted his cufflinks. "They're beginning to hear." But the tension was not gone. The weight of the final agreement still loomed like a thundercloud above the table. While technicians adjusted screens, Daniel caught Evelyn staring at him. "What?" he asked. "I'm trying to imagine what kind of world lets someone like you drive a car for a living," she said. He looked at her with a mixture of humor and sorrow. The same kind of world that can change overnight. Lunch passed in quiet efficiency. The delegation sampled green tea served at exactly the right temperature. Daniel had specified it in Celsius. The smallest details reinforced respect. As the afternoon sun lowered, Evelyn's nerves began to fray again. "What if we make one wrong move?" she whispered. Daniel leaned slightly toward her. "Then we recover. Diplomacy isn't perfection, it's persistence." The words steadied her. He had that effect, like gravity disguised as grace. By 5, the rehearsal meetings ended. The real one, the signing, was set for 9 the next morning. Evelyn dismissed the staff, leaving the conference room dim except for the city glow outside. Daniel remained, packing his notes. "Go home, Daniel," she said. "Rest. You've done enough." "Almost," he said. "There's one last thing." He spread several photos across the table, the gifts, neatly wrapped in minimalist paper. "I want you to deliver these personally. It matters." She nodded. "I will." "And, Ms. Cross," he added quietly, "thank you." She looked up. "For what?" "For seeing me." The simplicity of it pierced her. "I should have seen you long ago." He smiled. "You weren't ready to. Most people aren't." He gathered his folders and turned toward the door. Evelyn's voice stopped him. "Daniel." He glanced back. "Yes?" "When this is over, we'll build something better than a company." His eyes softened. "We already are." He left her there, surrounded by the faint hum of the city and the quiet realization that her entire life had shifted in 24 hours. That night, Evelyn walked through her empty office floors. The cleaning crew nodded as she passed. She noticed faces she had never truly looked at. An elderly janitor wiping glass with steady hands, a young intern hunched over spreadsheets, a receptionist practicing French on her phone. She wondered what hidden languages, what untold histories lay behind every uniform in her building. She thought of Daniel's words. Talent exists everywhere. We just stop seeing it. In her office, she poured herself a glass of water and sat down to reread his binder. Each page was a revelation. Cultural codes, linguistic nuances, human stories woven into business strategy. For the first time in years, Evelyn felt something close to humility, and something stronger, rarer, hope. At midnight, the city outside Cross Tower flickered under the rain. Daniel walked home alone, coat collar turned up, passing the neon reflections of street signs and the smell of roasted peanuts from a late vendor. He could have taken the company car, but walking grounded him. The drizzle touched his face like memory. He thought of his mother, her hands folded over a hospital blanket. Of his daughter Natalie studying in a dorm room, believing her father still worked for the State Department. He whispered into the wet air, "Almost there, sweetheart." Back in her penthouse, Evelyn stood by her window, watching headlights trace ribbons of light across the bridges. Tomorrow would decide everything. Yet she felt calmer than she had in years. Somewhere out there, the man she had once dismissed as invisible was walking under the same sky, carrying the weight of their shared redemption. She turned off the lights. The city glowed below, divided by thousands of partitions: glass, class, ego, fear. But tomorrow, one of those partitions would finally come down. By dawn the following morning, Cross Tower was awake. Cleaning crews vanished into stairwells, catering staff lined up porcelain trays, and security swept the lobby twice over. The air vibrated with the fragile composure that always precedes history. Evelyn Cross stood before the mirror in her private office, fastening the last button of her charcoal suit. Her movements were deliberate, almost ritualistic. This wasn't vanity, it was armor. On her desk sat 3 perfectly wrapped gifts, each tagged in Daniel's careful handwriting. She picked one up, feeling the weight of the fountain pen beneath the paper, and caught her own reflection staring back at her, the same woman who had spat venom at a driver 2 days ago. Or maybe not the same at all. A quiet knock broke her trance. Daniel stepped inside, already dressed for the meeting. The morning light found the silver strands in his hair and turned them into a kind of halo. "They're on their way up," he said softly. Evelyn met his eyes in the mirror. "Ready?" "Always." They walked the corridor together, no words, just the steady rhythm of their steps. Employees watched them pass, uncertain what to call this moment. When they reached the double doors of the conference suite, the hum of voices inside stopped. The delegation was already seated. Kenji Takahashi, dignified in a dark kimono-cut suit, Annika Sharma, sharp-eyed and poised behind her tablet, and Victor Liang, expression unreadable as he scrolled through technical charts. Behind them, a translator hovered nervously, sensing he was redundant. Evelyn crossed the threshold first. Daniel followed. Cameras clicked softly. The room smelled of tea and new paper. Daniel bowed to Mr. Takahashi, precise to the millimeter, his back forming the perfect 45-degree angle of respect. Then he clasped Anika's hands warmly, greeting her in Hindi before switching to Mandarin for Victor Liang. Every syllable landed with quiet authority. The translator exhaled in relief and slipped out of the room. The meeting began with formalities. Daniel guided the rhythm like an invisible conductor, translating Evelyn's opening remarks into the tones of cultural grace. She spoke of partnership, heritage, and continuity. Her voice, usually sharp with command, now carried a note of sincerity that caught even her own board off guard. For the first hour, progress was smooth. Polite laughter, nods, the subtle easing of shoulders that meant trust was forming. Then, mid-sentence, Anika's expression changed. Her assistant leaned in, whispering urgently. A flicker of alarm passed between them. "Ms. Cross," Anika said, her tone clipped. "Our Mumbai office has just discovered a breach in your intellectual property protections. Unauthorized access to proprietary algorithms. Until this is clarified, we must suspend negotiations." The words fell like stones into water. The room froze. Evelyn's hand trembled against the table. She could almost hear the sound of 3 years of work dissolving. Benton shifted beside her. "We, have no record of—" Daniel raised a hand gently. "Ms. Sharma," he said, switching seamlessly to Hindi. May I speak directly with your regional office to clarify this? Anika blinked, startled by the fluency. You speak Hindi? Fluently, he replied, already pulling his phone from his pocket. May I? Anika hesitated, then nodded. Within seconds, he was connected to Mumbai. His voice became a rapid-fire exchange of Hindi and English, crisp, commanding, precise. The executives around the table could follow nothing but tone, yet it was clear he was controlling the storm. Evelyn watched his face, focused, calm, unshakable. After 20 minutes, Daniel ended the call and looked to Anika. The issue was resolved yesterday evening, he said in English. Your branch detected an intrusion attempt, which our Mumbai director, Mr. Kumar Patel, neutralized. I personally coordinated the countermeasures. The competitor responsible has been identified and reported. Anika's eyebrows rose. You coordinated it? Yes, ma'am. The fact that we detected and stopped the breach proves our systems exceed your own firm's response standards. He tapped a file on his tablet. With your permission, I can confirm that with Mr. Patel on record. Anika leaned back slowly. No need. You've just done it. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. Impressive, Mr. Hayes. Daniel inclined his head. Sterling. Cross Dynamics values trust, Ms. Sharma. We protect what matters. The temperature in the room shifted again. Evelyn could breathe. But before she could exhale fully, Kenji Takahashi cleared his throat. He spoke softly in Japanese, his voice tinged with gravity. Daniel listened, nodding once, twice. When he translated, his tone was measured. Mr. Takahashi expresses concern about cultural compatibility, whether Cross Dynamics understands the spirit of a 50-year partnership. He wishes reassurance that this is more than a contract. Evelyn felt her throat tighten. This was the question Daniel had warned her about, the one that couldn't be answered by spreadsheets. She turned to him helplessly. Daniel faced Takahashi, replying in formal Japanese. His voice softened, almost reverent. For several minutes he spoke steadily, occasionally pausing as if to let the words breathe. When he finished, Takahashi's eyes glistened faintly. The old man asked something in return, to which Daniel responded with a quiet smile and a story. Takahashi chuckled softly, the tension dissolving like mist. What did you say? Evelyn whispered. I told him about my father, Daniel said quietly. An American engineer who worked in Japan after the war. He helped rebuild bridges while Takahashi's father rebuilt factories. I said that real partnerships honor the sacrifices of the generation before us. Takahashi bowed deeply. My father would have respected that, he said in accented English. You understand honor, Mr. Hayes? For a moment, even the board forgot to breathe. Then Victor Liang's voice cut through, sharp and technical, firing off questions in Mandarin. Daniel pivoted without pause, his speech turning brisk, academic, exact. Liang gestured to a set of diagrams on the tablet, red circled segments of code, flashing patents. His tone grew tense. Evelyn leaned toward Daniel. What's happening? Possible patent overlap with BYU Holdings, he murmured. If true, litigation risk. He studied the diagrams, brows drawn together. Then he switched to Mandarin, asking questions so detailed that even Liang blinked. Minutes passed. Then Daniel began to explain, drawing on his own tablet, overlaying code patterns and referencing public frameworks. His voice was steady, persuasive. Finally, Liang smiled, a rare expression that spread slowly like sunrise. He said something that made Daniel laugh softly before translating. He says I understand the technology better than most engineers he's met, and that he's satisfied. Evelyn let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Around the table, shoulders eased. The impossible had turned possible again. 3 hours later, the papers were signed. The pens glided across the contracts with the whisper of history being rewritten. Daniel's translations carried through the final pages like music. Precise, calm, irrefutable. Kenji Takahashi rose first, his movements deliberate. "This agreement," he said, his English careful but clear, "is built not on profit, but on respect." His gaze shifted to Daniel. "And it exists because of you." He reached into his briefcase and withdrew a small silk-wrapped box. He held it with both hands, bowing slightly. "This belonged to my father. He rebuilt our company from ashes. He would wish you to have it." Daniel's composure faltered for the first time. He accepted the gift with both hands, bowing deeply. When he unwrapped the silk, a polished antique business card case gleamed in the light. "This is an honor I will never forget," Daniel said softly. Annika Sharma stepped forward next. "Mr. Hayes," she said, her tone warmer than before, "you are the finest cultural liaison I have ever encountered. We host our Global Partners Conference next month in Singapore. We would be honored if you delivered the keynote address." Daniel looked toward Evelyn. She smiled faintly. "Mr. Hayes makes his own decisions now," she said. "He's an executive, not an employee." Daniel inclined his head. "It would be my honor, Ms. Sharma." Victor Liang added with a grin, "If you ever tire of New York, Mr. Hayes, Beijing could use a man like you." Laughter rippled around the room. For the first time in years, Evelyn allowed herself to laugh too. When the delegation left, the room erupted in applause. Board members, assistants, even security staff. Benton crossed the table, shaking Daniel's hand. "You didn't just save this company," he said. "You saved us from ourselves." Evelyn felt tears press behind her eyes. She turned away, pretending to check her phone, but her reflection in the window betrayed her. In it, Daniel was standing, head bowed slightly, the antique card case still in his hands. The driver she had once ignored had become the man every person in that room now looked to for direction. As the applause faded, Evelyn lifted her glass of water. "To Mr. Hayes," she said, "and to seeing what's been in front of us all along." The cheer that followed echoed down the marble corridors of Cross Tower, carrying the sound of redemption. Quiet, resolute, unstoppable. 6 months later, the skyline of New York glimmered like polished steel under the early morning sun. On the 32nd floor of Cross Tower, the office of Daniel Hayes, now Executive Vice President of Global Relations, hummed with the rhythm of a world reborn. 3 massive monitors stretched across his desk, streaming simultaneous video conferences from Singapore, Berlin, and Mumbai. His new division, the Cross Hayes Cultural Intelligence Unit, had already mediated 4 international crises and secured nearly $400 million in new contracts. Yet Daniel still began every day the same way: a cup of black coffee, a brief look at the antique business card case from Kenji Takahashi, and a quiet moment beside the small framed photo of his daughter Natalie. That morning, his assistant buzzed through the intercom. "Mr. Hayes, Ms. Cross is here. Send her in." Evelyn entered with her usual precision, still elegant, still commanding, but somehow softer around the edges. Gone was the chill of a woman who mistook control for confidence. In its place was armed warmth shaped by humility. "Good news, Daniel," she said, holding up her phone. "The board just approved expansion for your division. $8 million in additional funding. You'll be hiring 20 more specialists." Daniel smiled, half in disbelief. "That's more than we ever projected." "You've earned it. The Cross-Hayes model is being copied by half the Fortune 500, and the press can't get enough of the driver who saved $1 billion company." He chuckled softly. "You mean the woman who realized the driver was the best executive she ever had?" Evelyn tilted her head. "I think we both learned something." She walked to the window. The city stretched endlessly below, a labyrinth of stories. "You know, every week I get letters, people telling me about their Daniels, teachers stocking shelves, engineers driving Ubers, refugees with degrees they can't use. They all say the same thing. Your story gave them hope." Daniel leaned against the desk, arms folded. "Hope's the easy part. Opportunity's the work." "Which is why," Evelyn said, turning toward him, "I've decided to launch the Hayes Foundation as a joint venture. We'll partner with companies worldwide to identify displaced professionals and get them back into the fields they trained for. You'll run it." His breath caught. "You're serious?" "Dead serious. You once told me talent exists everywhere. Let's prove it." Before he could reply, his phone buzzed. The caller ID read Natalie. Evelyn smiled. "Go ahead," he answered. "Hey, sweetheart." Her voice spilled through the speaker, bright with excitement. "Dad, I got accepted into the Pediatric Oncology Research Program at Johns Hopkins, full scholarship." Daniel closed his eyes, letting the relief wash through him. "That's my girl," he said. "Your grandmother would be so proud." Evelyn watched him, emotion stirring behind her composed expression. For all his diplomatic triumphs, this, his daughter's joy, was the victory that mattered. When he hung up, she asked, "So, how does it feel?" He smiled. "Like I remember who I am again." She gestured to the framed driver's license on his desk. "You kept it." "As a reminder," he said, "never forget where you started. Never forget who you were invisible to." Evelyn nodded slowly. "Funny thing, I just promoted our head of facilities, Maria Rodriguez." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "The night shift supervisor?" "She mentioned during her interview she had a law degree from Columbia," Evelyn said. "Turns out she was right. She's now our head of legal affairs." Daniel laughed softly. "Seems the revolution's spreading." "Not a revolution," she said. "Recognition." That afternoon, a news alert blinked across Daniel's screen. Cross Dynamics Model Transforms Corporate Culture Nationwide. The article featured companies from Atlanta to Seoul adopting the Hidden Talent Initiative. There were photos of janitors turned engineers, cashiers turned analysts, teachers turned strategists. Every caption credited Cross Dynamics and Daniel Hayes for starting it. Then the phone rang again. Unknown number. He answered, "Daniel Hayes, Mr. Hayes, this is David Kim from Samsung Electronics. We heard your story. Our night janitor just solved a coding problem our engineers couldn't crack. Turns out he's a former AI researcher from Seoul National University. We need your advice. How do we do this right?" Daniel smiled. "Start by apologizing. Then start by listening." Within hours, similar calls poured in. CEOs, HR directors, university deans, each wanted to know how to find the brilliance hidden in plain sight. By evening, the Cross-Hayes Foundation had received over 500 applications. Veterans who'd lost careers, immigrants with forgotten degrees, single parents rebuilding from scratch. Daniel stayed late, answering emails one by one. When Evelyn stopped by around 8, she found him still at his desk, the city glowing behind him. "You're supposed to be celebrating," she said. "I will," he replied, "after I finish these." She placed a hand on the folder nearest her. "What are they?" "Applications, stories, lives waiting to be seen." He looked up. "A mother from Detroit called this morning. Her son, Marcus, graduated from MIT. 3 years, no job offers, works the register at McDonald's." Evelyn's voice softened. "What did you tell her?" "I told her to send me his resume." He smiled. "He starts in our Berlin office next month." Evelyn blinked back emotion. "One person at a time, huh?" "One person at a time," he echoed. Moments later, the documentary crew entered, 2 videographers and a sound engineer setting up equipment. The world wanted to hear the story behind the story. Daniel adjusted his tie and sat before the camera. The director gave a cue. Daniel looked straight into the lens, his voice calm, deliberate. "Right now, someone is serving your coffee who speaks 4 languages. Someone cleaning your office has an engineering degree. Someone driving your Uber once negotiated for governments." His eyes held the camera. "Tomorrow morning, when you meet a stranger, ask yourself, what talents am I not seeing? What stories am I ignoring?" He leaned forward slightly. "Find one person whose job title doesn't match their potential. Ask about their dreams. Then do something about it. Write a recommendation. Make an introduction. Share their story. Small actions create big changes." Evelyn stepped into frame beside him. "We built the Hayes Foundation to connect displaced talent with companies that need them. But real change happens when people decide to see each other differently." Daniel added quietly, "Because talent doesn't wear uniforms. Brilliance doesn't need corner offices. Worth isn't measured by paychecks. It's revealed by character." He paused, letting the words settle. "If this story touched you, share it. Tag someone who needs to hear it. Comment about a time you discovered hidden talent. Help us build a world where everyone gets seen for who they really are." Evelyn smiled at the camera. "Subscribe to Blacktail Stories if you believe everyone deserves a second chance." Daniel's gaze deepened, voice steady as truth. "And remember, the next world-changing mind might be sitting right beside you, waiting for someone to look up and notice." The camera light dimmed. Applause rose softly from the crew. Evelyn reached over, clasped his hand, and, for the first time in her life, said, "Thank you, Daniel, for teaching me how to see." He smiled. "No, Ms. Cross. Thank you for opening the door." Outside, the city lights flickered like constellations. Somewhere in the maze of streets below, another unseen talent was stepping out of the shadows. The partitions between worlds, of status, language, and pride, were falling one by one. And, high above it all, 2 people, who had once stood on opposite sides of a glass wall, now stood together, watching a new world take shape, built not on titles, but on the quiet brilliance that had always been there, waiting to be seen.